Hi everyone, welcome again to Hispanic Professionals. Today I have the pleasure of being with Gabriela. Gabriela, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to be part of your project. And I'm always a big advocate for people that want to, empower other people or just even make a difference, which I think you will accomplish with your project.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Um, Today I want us to get to know and talk a little bit more with Gabriela because she's got a great story to tell and she has a lot of good wisdom to share with us today. So, Gabriela, tell us a little bit about your Hispanic roots and how, yeah, a little bit more about that.
So I'm actually from Mexico. I was born there, but I was raised here in the U.S. So I consider myself to be a Mexican American. But I was raised with Mexican parents that implemented Mexican traditions and Mexican culture, and that was something my mom always kind of told me to, never forget. Don't forget where you come from. Don't forget your culture. Don't forget what we are about, basically. So that was interesting. And so my family, we were actually, I guess, kind of migrant workers. We did your typical Mexican work. I mean, I worked from the age of 10 till now. I still work.
What were you doing at the age of 10?
I was working in the fields, and I would also clean houses, do yards or landscaping work, so that kind of thing. And so with that being said, I just want to take some time to just encourage Hispanic young professionals, or if you're not at the professional level, that you can achieve more than you think you can. Even if you do come from a not so wealthy family, which would be my story. So my family's not very wealthy, but we have evolved and we've helped each other, kind of united to progress, as a whole. And I'm actually the only one in my family to have a higher education, so I'm pretty proud of
that. Absolutely. Yeah. That's wonderful. That's great. That's excellent. So, tell me, just to kind of talk a little bit about that. How has it been for you now that you're a professional? Having worked at such a young age, what life lessons did you learn?
So I would say that from a very young age, I've learned the importance of kind of financial planning, because you always have my family always prepared for the worst, or just even knowing the value of money and how to kind of manage that. Not only that, but also coming together as a family to help one another out. And even taking it further, just helping the other families, the other Hispanic families around us, and just being a resource to one another, right? And so those were some of the lessons that I learned. And since I was working with older folks, it helped me to I wouldn't say relate, but also just communicate with my elders and rely on them for wisdom.
Mm-hmm. I think it's so important sometimes to really thank those of us who did not have to work at such a young age, to really kind of applaud people like Gabriela that have to go through that. It is such a huge lesson, especially for the youth, to see that regardless of where you're coming from, what your current situation is, that doesn't mean you cannot keep on going, because Gabriela is going to share with us that she went to college and all that and her degrees. But I just want to kind of highlight that a little bit more and really applaud Gabriela for her tenacity to keep on going. So tell us a little bit about what you have been doing as a professional.
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all. So I went off to get my bachelor's in psychology and Spanish, which people think that I would always get told like, well, you're cheating. You already know Spanish, you know. But it's kind of like your English major, you know. So I learned a lot, the different Spanish from different countries and how to write it, in particular.
Very different.
Because that's difficult. And after I got my bachelor's in psychology, worked as a counselor with primarily Hispanic families and children that were just having a hard time adjusting, I guess, to their new environment, and the just also behavioral issues with children at school and things of that nature. And I was actually the only Hispanic with that degree in these little towns of central Illinois.
Wow.
So that was pretty interesting, and I was just had created a good relationship with the executive director, and you know, she believed that I could impact lives with my education and the fact that I'm also Hispanic. So I was able to be a part of that, and you know, I think that the challenge there was just being so young, and you know, kind of being somewhat of a mentor to these families was a bit of a challenge. But as soon as I explained, you know, like, well, this is what I studied, and I can help you help yourself, basically. You know, they were very much more accepting, and so that was pretty neat to just be respected in that way as a young professional.
Certainly.
You know, and vice versa. I learned a lot from the people that I worked with, and just a reminder of where we come from. And you know, it was Hispanics from different countries, so I also learned a lot more of different cultures and beliefs and just traditions and way of thinking. So after that journey with the psychology industry, I went off to get my MBA in Florida. And I found myself at a real estate company where I was leasing executive office spaces, and just had to kind of be like a facilities manager as well, and work with your CEOs and just making sure that all, you know, they were attended to and everything was in place for them, kind of like a co-working space. So it gave me that confidence to speak to people in power, just and also learning from them, because they were kind of adopted me into each company would just kind of adopt me into their culture, their workplace, and so that was pretty neat to experience. And while I was working there, I had met this architecture firm, which brought me to Dallas, and they offered me a position out here as their director of marketing, and did international business development for them. And which brings me to my next point. You know, I had the opportunity to create business in Mexico, and even though I'm born there, and I am familiar with the culture and traditions, but I had never went out there to work or create a business out there, which gave me the perspective of how strict we are on etiquette and how sophisticated of a market we are. And my boss, he's actually from here, from Texas, and he learned this as well, and he was kind of surprised, and it was just interesting to see his reaction to the Mexican culture, and how we're very, you know, like touchy-feely, very welcoming, and we strive to build genuine relationships, and with that comes like a 2-hour meeting, 2 or more hours to build that genuine rapport and truly get to know one another.
You know, I think that is critical in this day and age, when we are so busy doing, that we need to stop and really think about the other person that we have in front of us. You cannot have a transaction before you have a relationship with someone. And I think that is so key, and I think that is really something that Mexicans, Latin Americans, Hispanics do very well, because they're able to really understand who that person is, and the more you understand that person, the easier it is to create that relationship, to have those business transactions that you're wanting. So I think that that's great. So obviously we have a lot of Americans going down to Mexico Latin America, and we have a lot of Latin Americans, Hispanics coming to the U.S. What are some suggestions that you have for both of those populations that would benefit them to know?
Well, I would say that first of all, like for Americans to go to Latin America or specifically the Mexican market is to just kind of educate yourself on the culture, the how we do business out there, because it's very unique to how business is done here. And like I mentioned earlier, your meetings aren't just an hour meetings; they're longer than that. And we really take the time to listen. And etiquette is very present. So we want to know a lot of culture. We want to know about your mom, about your children, your aunt, and that kind of thing, and just really taking the time to truly get to know one another, building that genuine rapport, and for Hispanics to come to America, I think is the same. We also have to educate ourselves on how business is done here, and the culture and beliefs and morals, and just embracing that. So on both sides, just embracing one another and figuring out a way to come together and make it work, right? Getting the best of our cultures and bringing it into one, I think is important.
I think that's excellent advice. And so I always ask everybody, what advice do you have, what thoughts do you have for Hispanic youth? What would you like to say to them?
I would, I think one of the biggest challenges would be ourselves. I think we're our worst critic or our biggest critic. And I think just overcoming the fact that, sometimes we put ourselves down sometimes and think like, well, we can't do this, or we're not equipped to do this. But instead of focusing on that, just focusing more on like, well, this is the problem, but there's always the solution, right, to this problem. So how do we overcome this problem, and relying on mentors, and also being a mentor to build confidence, I think, is a way to go about just that challenge of ourselves, being our own worst critic. And I would say that also just a big part of, personally and professionally, a big part of just creating relationships, which, it doesn't matter what it is that you do or in what industry, you always have to deal with people, right? And relationships is a big part of relating to people and working with people and having an effective work environment, right? So just listening to other people's needs and being transparent and genuine, and not being afraid to also find that voice to say like, well, this is what I need, or this is what I need you to understand about where I come from, right? And there's always a negative view on conflict, right? But I view conflict as an opportunity to help each other grow and to reach our maximum potential, or to achieve the best us that we can be, right? So I would say that would be my advice to the Hispanic youth as professionals. And I don't think I shared with you what I do now.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So now I work for Carter, and we are transition planners and move consultants. So just how we were talking earlier about, merging different cultures together. At Carter, we focus on not only the logistics of healthcare and corporate relocation, but also we try to incorporate the communication aspect of it, and also the engagement, and just kind of bringing the cultures together. So those cultures are like your GC of a project, or your architect, or your engineer or whoever else is involved, your stakeholders, your employees, most important, because everyone has a part to play in a project, right? So that's what we bring. We bring that that cohesiveness, I guess, that cohesiveness together, and just helping everyone just kind of work in this new
together.
Environment. Yes, come together in this new environment to share, to achieve a shared vision and make it happen. So that's what I do now, and my role is business development. That's what I have been, these last couple of years have been focusing on. That's kind of my forte, is just to build, maintain, and sustain relationships, and yeah, that's what I do now.
Well, I think, I think it's great because Gabriela is such a sweet person. I think they got the right person for the job, because she's very good at creating relationships and building rapport, which I think is really critical nowadays. So, Gabriela, if people would like to connect with you, can they do so through LinkedIn?
Of course, yes, but I warn you, I talk a lot, and I'm sure, and we're going to sit down for more than an hour or two. So, just a warning.
That's good. That sounds good. Well, I hope they do. I will have Gabriela's information on this post. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share those. And until we see each other again, have a great day. Take care.
Bye.